Hello, every pony. Scar89 here once again with another fanfiction reading. Today I'm going to be reading just, a short one, but it's kind of a long short one. It is A Fact for Twilight by Book Player. It's a romance. It's kind of serious-ish. I've never actually read technically a serious, short fanfiction exactly, but I'll just see how this one does. I just hope it won't be stupid. Anyway, so A Fact for Twilight by Book Player. True fact is redundant. Twilight smiled and closed the book in front of her, an index she had made of the information in her astronomy notes. She was proud of it, feeling that a good index was one of the joys of life. She set her quill down on the desk, then heard a knock on the door. Spike had said he was making dinner, so Twilight went to answer it. On the doorstep, she found AppleJack, who greeted her with a smile. "Hey, Twilight. How are you doing this evening?" "Great. I just finished a project I've been working on. What about you? How are you?" "Can't complain. I gotta get home for dinner, but I wanted to stop by and ask you something." AppleJack hesitated, and then added, "If you don't mind, that is." "Ask me anything, AppleJack. I love to try to help." Twilight smiled. There really was nothing she liked better than answering questions for other ponies. Applejack took a deep breath. "Okay, well, would you like to go out with me for some time? On a date, I mean." Twilight froze with a smile on her face, trying to process the news and completely unexpected question. A concerned look crossed Applejack's face. "I kind of figured you might need some time to think it over, or think of how to tell me you don't wanna." Twilight blinked, the only sign that she could move at all. Twilight blinked, the only sign that she could move at all. She had no idea how to even start answering Applejack. Scenarios were complicated and played out behind her eyes as she furiously calculated the likelihood of each. "You take your time, you take all the time you need," Applejack said cautiously. "Don't you worry about telling me you'd rather not. If that's how you feel, I'm a big pony. I can take it, and I'll still be your friend, just like always." Finally, Twilight broke through the fog of firing synopsises. I need some time to think about this," Applejack laughed. "Now you're caught up. You just let me know either way." Okay," Twilight nodded. Then she grinned nervously. "Yes, I'll let you know. Do you mind if I go do that now? I mean, not let you know, because I'd have to think before I let you know, or I might be letting you know the wrong thing." "I don't mind a bit, Sugar Cube, as long as you try and relax some." Applejack smiled gently. "You're wound up like a fancy watch right now, and this ain't worth all that. The way I see it, either you'll want to go out with me or you won't. Either way, Princess Celestia will keep on rising the sun, and I'll still be your friend. So you just decide what you think is best." "Decide what I think is best. I can do that," Twilight nodded. "I know you can. I'll see you later." Applejack turned to go. Yes, I'll see you later." Applejack stopped and looked over her shoulder. "Oh yeah, Twilight?" "Yes." Applejack blushed a little. "I just wanted to remind you, I might not be the smartest pony in Equestria, but I generally ain't foolish. You know you're hard to be safe with me. I'd never let nothing get in the way of our friendship." Twilight stared at her. I, just figured you're gonna make a list I thought that was Twilight saying. "I, just figured you're gonna make a list or something about why you might want to go out with me. Wanted to make sure you remembered that one." Okay, I'll keep that in mind," Twilight said quietly. "Thanks." Applejack started to walk away again. Twilight watched her leave, then turned around and closed the door. She had a lot to think about and absolutely had no experience with this subject. She needed help. She needed guidance. "Spike! Spike! I need every book we have on the subject of dating!" Twilight yelled. Spike came hurrying in from the kitchen. "Dating? Who's dating?" A look of fear crossed Spike's face. "It's not Rarity, is it?" "No, it's me, or it might be me." Spike looked skeptical. You're going out with some pony? Who?" "AppleJack, and I don't know if I'm going out with her. She asked me if I said I needed to think, and by that I mean I need to read, and by that I mean I need a book." "Whoa, okay, here, hold a cookbook while I find a book on dating," Spike said, holding up a book defensively. Twilight took it in her magic and opened it, started staring at the page. She sighed with relief. "I feel better now. I feel better. Now, I need to find out if I should go on a date with Applejack." "Applejack, huh? Weird," Spike observed as he climbed up a ladder to one of the higher shelves. "Weird? What does that mean?" "Just why would AJ ask you out? You guys don't have much in common. You don't really seem like her type." Twilight looked up from the page in front of her. Why would Applejack ask her out? There were ponies in town who were prettier and cooler and nicer. She might be the smartest pony in town, but why would that impress an apple farmer who rolled her eyes when Twilight tried to explain the second pony plural was still you? There must be a simple explanation. With Applejack, there was always a simple explanation. "Here you go. Details of dating. A step-by-step guide to romantic interactions," Spike said, holding up a book. Twilight dropped the cookbook and pulled the relevant book toward her. "Thanks. This looks like a perfect place to start," Twilight said happily, opening the book and staring in on the first chapter. She studied the rest of the evening, but found very little helpful information in her book. The dating books she went through first were vague on the subject and what kinds of ponies one should go out with, except to say that she should like and trust the pony. She had interesting and had interesting and, to Twilight, slightly terrifying sections on asking out other ponies, making Twilight very glad that she wasn't the one who did the asking. Once she had realized that dating books weren't helpful, she moved on to the history of romance and nearly got lost in the complicated romantic intrigues of the Roman Empire. The Ronan, it says Roman Empire. It's the Romer Empire, not the Roman Empire. I don't get it. After a few hours, she realized that, as interesting as it was, the Eglium married 8 ponies. Oh, okay, sorry, I missed it. After a few hours, she realized that, as interesting as it was that Eglium married 8 ponies, 2 of whom were his own siblings, it had absolutely nothing to do with the matter at Hoof. As a last resort, she turned to fictional romance novels, but only got through a half of one. She wasn't sure either she or Applejack were comparable to Torrid Fire or Raven Knight. I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure that's some kind of romance joke. And the idea of AJ having a smoldering gaze made her giggle, finding nothing really relevant to her situation. She stacked the books neatly and tried to formulate another plan. Again, sorry for my really bad reading today, I don't know why. Her questions were too specific. The author of her books didn't know her or Applejack, so they couldn't offer advice on whether Twilight should accept this invitation or why Applejack might have asked her out. She needed information from ponies who knew both of them, who understood why this might be a good or bad idea. Twilight smiled and climbed into her bed late that night. Tomorrow she would talk to her friends and figure out the right answer. Twilight left the library the next morning in search of Rainbow Dash. Being Applejack's closest friend, Twilight hoped Dash could tell her why Applejack had decided to ask her out. She also planned to see Rarity for romantic advice, but since finding Dash was more of a challenge, Twilight decided to start there. She scanned the skies over the park and all of Dash's favorite training spots, and levitated a mirror to check all of the clouds around town. And levitated a mirror? And levitated a mirror to check all the clouds around. I don't get how that makes any sense. But couldn't find Dash anywhere. Dash could be hanging out at Sweet Apple Acres, but that wouldn't help because she couldn't very well ask Dash what Applejack was thinking in front of Applejack. After looking all morning, Twilight was about to give up and go to the Carousel Boutique to talk to Rarity, when she was surprised to see a rainbow tail sticking out behind a large cloud moving across the sky towards the edge of town. "Rainbow Dash!" she called. The cloud stopped and Dash's face popped up. "Hey, Twilight, what's up?" Twilight smiled up at her. "What are you doing? I've been looking for you all morning." Work? I do that sometimes so that they keep giving me bits. I've been back and forth to Cloudsdale all morning," Dash said, rolling her eyes. "Oh," Twilight said, slightly surprised to find Dash actually patrolling the weather. "Well, don't let me interrupt you, but when you get a break, could you—" Dash was on the ground at her side in a second. "I heard somebody say break, but I can't tell you when—" "Definitely heard it, so it must be time for a break." Dash leaned against the wall of a building. "So what do you need me to do on my break?" "I needed you to talk to you," Twilight said. "You see, Applejack asked me out, and I was wondering if you knew why." Dash grinned. "Applejack asked you out? Finally? Finally? She wanted to ask me out on a date before this?" "Sure, it took her a while to work up the guts. Not a problem I have, of course. If I wanted to ask a pony out, I'd just fly up to them and be like, 'Hey, good looking, I must be psychic, because I can see a date with Rainbow Dash in your future,'" Dash said with a toss of her mane. "Right, that's sure to work," Twilight said dryly. "But we weren't talking about you. We were talking about Applejack. I need to know why she asked me out." "Because she likes you, duh," Dash said, rolling her eyes. "I thought you were supposed to be smart." "But why does she like me?" Twilight was getting frustrated. "I am smart, but why would Applejack care about that?" "Beats me," Dash shrugged. "I know she thinks you have awesome flanks." "What?" Twilight's eyes went wide. She had never considered that any pony, let alone Applejack, had been looking at her flanks. We were just talking about flanks the other day," Dash said with a wave of her hoof. "Is that it? She just finds me attractive?" Twilight felt a little let down. Dash noticed the shook her head. "Twilight, I seriously doubt she's been one of your best friends for years because of your flanks. I don't know what she thinks is so special that she wants to be more than friends. We don't really talk about all that mushy feeling stuff. But AJ is a special pony, and you should totally give her a chance." "Maybe I should. And she has really great flanks, too," Dash grinned. Hello, Dash." Twilight thought for a moment about Applejack's tone, muscular body, a blush rising in her cheek. "She does, doesn't she?" Dash just winked. "You crazy kids have fun, okay? Don't do anything I wouldn't do, 'cause whatever it is, it would be really boring anyway." Twilight giggled. "Thanks, Dash?" "No prob. See ya," Dash said as she trotted off. As Twilight walked to the Carousel Boutique, she thought about the new information she had. If a pony was one of your best friends and you thought she had nice flanks, that seemed like enough of a reason to ask her out on a date. But Twilight couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She'd hoped that there was more, that maybe Dash would tell her that Applejack admired her taste in literature, or her athletic prowess. Well, athletic competence. Athletic. I think I said aesthetic, which is beauty, not... I don't know, okay. The more Twilight thought about it, the less she could imagine Applejack and Rainbow Dash talking about things like why they liked some pony. That didn't mean that there wasn't a reason. Twilight just wasn't going to find it out from Rainbow Dash. On the other hoof, now she knew that Applejack thought she had nice flanks, which gave her a proud smile and the tiniest sway in her step as she walked into the Carousel Boutique. Rarity looked up from the dress she was pinning and smiled. "Hello, Twilight. You look like you're having a nice day." I am." Twilight walked over to Rarity. But I need your help. I need an expert on romance." "Well, you've certainly come to the right place, darling." Rarity's smile widened to a grin. "Who is the lucky pony?" I really don't know yet. Oh, sorry. I really don't know yet. I mean, Applejack's asked me out, and I haven't figured out what to say," Twilight said with a slight frown. Applejack? Rarity pursed her lips and then sighed. Oh dear, how to let a friend down gently. No! The problem is that I don't know if I want to let her down, Twilight explained. I've been doing some research, and I think I might want to give her a chance. Rarity raised her eyebrows. We are speaking of the same Applejack, correct? Applejack, the farmer, with the constantly messy mane and muddy hooves? Uh, do you know another Applejack? Twilight asked. I simply don't understand why there's a question. She's a dear friend, but not exactly date material, Rarity said with a toss of her mane. Correction, she's not Rarity date material. Just saying. Anyway, what makes some pony date material? My books just said that it should be some pony who you respect, trust, enjoy being around. That's kind of vague, but it certainly applies to Applejack, Twilight noted. That sounded a lot like Rainbow Dash for some reason. Well, Rarity considered for a moment. What is your ideal special some pony like? Twilight frowned and sighed. A slender unicorn between 4 and 5 feet tall, with an excellent education, who likes daffodils, the smell of chalk, and long evenings of calculus. They would have light eyes, a rumpled mane, and laugh at inappropriate times in the conversation, but be embarrassed about it. They would know the history of... Rarity raised her eyebrows and said carefully, That may be a bit too detailed, darling. One doesn't usually get to order a special sun pony from a catalog. But do any of those things describe Applejack? No, Twilight admitted, looking down. That was my point. If she can't compare in any way to what you want in a special sun pony, she isn't the right pony for you on a date, or to date. But, Twilight tried to put her thoughts together, I like Applejack. Of course you do. Rarity gave Twilight a comforting nuzzle. This is why it's so important to find a way to let her down gently. No, I mean, I've never met any pony like my ideal pony that I actually liked. I met a few ponies like that, but there was always something wrong. Applejack isn't my dream pony, but I really do like being around her, and I respect her, and I trust her. And there's something else, but I can't put my hoof on it. The thought was tugging at the back of her mind, something simple she was forgetting or not noticing. It seems unlikely to work out, Rarity said skeptically, but I suppose there's no harm in a single date, and perhaps that will get it out of your system. That's a good idea, Twilight smiled. I can go out with her once, and if it doesn't work out, then I can figure out how to let her know. Come and see me when that comes to pass, dear. I'll think of something to tell her. I do want for all of my friends to be happy, Rarity said sympathetically. I know. Thanks, Rarity. I'll head over to Sweet Apple Acres right now. Twilight left the boutique and started down the road to Sweet Apple Acres, trying to figure out what that something else that she felt about Applejack was. It was something more than liking her, but it certainly wasn't love, at least not the way that the romance novels had described it. Whatever it was didn't involve yearning, passionate hunger, or burning desire. She was kind of glad because those sounded uncomfortable and painful. Burning. Frasier. Fleshy's burning, fleshy's burning. I'm sorry. For those of you who watch Frasier, I'm sorry, but I had to say that. She tried to analyze what she'd always thought about Applejack, and realized that she never had thought much about Applejack. That was a little confusing. Twilight hadn't thought a lot about her friends. Not as dates, of course, but just trying to find out what made them tick. They all seemed to have so many unexpected twists. Fluttershy's commanding presence when pushed into a corner, Rainbow Dash's paralyzing fear of failure, Rarity's shrewd understanding of how ponies think, and Pinkie. Twilight could write several books, a thesis, and a play for the Canterlot stage from the amount of time she spent trying to figure out Pinkie. But Applejack was just Applejack. She was friendly and dependable, stubborn and proud. But any pony could guess those things if they spent any time with her. Twilight grinned as she solved the puzzle of why there was no puzzle. Applejack was honest about who she was. She didn't try to pretend to be anything she wasn't. So Twilight had to try to figure it out. That was refreshing in a way. There was a basic fact to start from. Applejack was Applejack, exactly as she seemed. So what did Twilight think about Applejack? She worked hard. She loved her family and her friends. She was usually a little messy and stubborn, and some of the things she should have learned in the Ponyville schoolhouse didn't seem to have stuck. But Applejack would be the first to admit those things. She felt safe around Applejack. Not that she didn't feel safe most of the time, but she felt extra safe around her strong, dependable friend. From the day she came to Ponyville, Applejack had been looking out for her, even if Twilight could take care of herself. When Applejack was around, there was always another set of eyes and ears watching for problems, and another brain analyzing what was going on. If Twilight had to pick a pony to take care of an issue, or if Twilight had to pick a pony to take care of an issue when she couldn't be there, chances were it would be Applejack. It seemed like a good thing in some that seemed like a good thing in some pony to date. She remembered what Applejack had said to her, that she'd be careful with her heart and she'd never let anything ruin their friendship. Twilight knew that she could count on that. If Applejack said it, then she meant it. As Twilight approached Sweet Apple Acres, she felt confident in her decision. Going on a date with Applejack was the right thing to do. She found Applejack carrying a load of apples to the barn. Twilight caught up with her and grinned. "Hi, I wanted to let you know I made my decision, and I'd like to go out with you." "Well, now, that sure is good news," Applejack grinned. "How about we go right now? It'll just take me a minute to get finished up here and pick up a few things." The smile fell from Twilight's face. "Now? But But I only got to skim the chapters on actually going on a date." "If you got more studying to do, we can do it another time," Applejack said, sounding a tiny bit disappointed. "But I got something special in mind, and this looks like a good day for it. So if you're willing to trust me, I'll make it real easy for you, and I bet you're smart enough to figure what to do." "But what if I go home afterwards and study and realize that I could have done something better?" "Then we'll have to go on another date." Applejack smiled and nudged her. But just having you there is gonna be treat enough for me. You got my word." Twilight smiled. "Okay, we'll go on a date right now." "That's the spirit. Just let me take care of some things." Applejack grinned. Applejack dropped off her apples in the barn and went into the farmhouse. She returned a few minutes later with a picnic basket on her back. All set. You don't mind a bit of a walk, do you?" No, not at all. It's a beautiful day." This way, this way then, Sugar Cube." Applejack started walking through the orchard, away from Ponyville. Twilight walked next to her and tried to think of something to say. "So, what do you think about?" "What do I think about what?" Applejack knitted her brow. "In general," Twilight said with a shrug. "When you aren't thinking about the work and farm." "That's a strange kind of question." Twilight sighed and looked down. "Well, you didn't give me time to study, so I don't know the right kind of questions to ask." "It ain't wrong, Sugar Cube," Applejack said quickly. "It just ain't something any pony ever asked before. I guess I think about rodeo and some about plans for things to do. Mostly I think about ponies in town, about our friends. Sometimes I try to figure them out. I don't know if you noticed, but they can be kind of weird sometimes." "I do the same thing." Twilight smiled and relaxed a little. "I was just thinking about that on the way here, and how I don't think about, so why do you think Fluttershy is so scared of every pony? She's certainly tough enough when she has to be." "I reckon Fluttershy just don't like trying to work things out. It makes her nervous. Ponies ain't always what they seem to be, and she gets all worried trying to figure out just what she's supposed to say. But you take that bunny of hers, ornery little cuss, I'd buck him in the head after a day or so. But he lets Fluttershy know exactly what he wants. He don't pretend to be nicer to her, or try to hide when he's mad. She likes knowing just where she stands, and the critter gives that to her more than any pony can. 'Cause he's kind of a jerk. Angel is a jerk. Twilight nodded. That makes perfect sense. And since most ponies aren't entirely honest most of the time, she has no way of figuring out which ponies are being honest with her. Or with her. So she has to worry that every pony might be hiding something. But she can open up with us to some extent, because we've proven ourselves to be genuinely honest in our intentions. And this makes so much sense, actually. This is weird how much sense I'm having a multi-fanfic moment. Anyway. Right. So she loves us like she loves her critters, and with how she cares about those critters. We're some darn lucky ponies, Applejack smiled. So if you've been thinking about this too, think you can tell me why Rarity's really tough as nails, but likes to play at swooning and carrying on? Um, I never could figure that one out. Twilight smiled and explained her thoughts on Rarity and each of her other friends as they walked together. Applejack explained her thoughts as well, and it turned out they both had some insight that surprised the other. Twilight hardly noticed how far they'd come until Applejack stopped. This is the spot. Why don't I lay out a blanket and we can have some supper? That sounds nice, Twilight said, looking around. And I lost my place. Okay, there we go. They had walked a long ways, to the far edges of the orchard. The end of the near row of trees marked the edge of the Sweet Apple Acres, and the edge of Ponyville, in fact. Past that point was an unclaimed meadow, overgrown with grass and wildflowers, and beyond that, trees seemed to indicate a forest. Applejack spread the blanket on the ground and unpacked the picnic basket, pulling out cornbread and a covered dish of fried squash, and 2 bottles of apple juice. Here we are, Granny's best, and there's apples, too, of course. But I didn't see no reason on carrying 'em all the way when they're growing right here. I'll get you one if you want. This looks delicious. Twilight sat down on the blanket. Maybe I'll eat an apple later for dessert. Twilight heard a strange noise and looked up. Applejack was trying very hard not to laugh, and Twilight thought over what she said. Her eyes went wide. Then she cringed and covered her face with a hoof. Not what I meant! Not what I meant! Ah, Sugar Cube, I know that. It just came out funny is all, Applejack said, chuckling as she sat across the blanket from Twilight. Just relax and enjoy your supper. Twilight smiled gratefully and magically lifted some squash to her mouth. Oh, now I get why it's funny, because Applejack is Applejack, and she said she would have an apple later for dessert, so it's inappropriate. Over dinner, they had a winding conversation about things going on in town. Ponyville history, the magic behind Zap Apples, the Everfree Forest, and the adventures where they'd first met. Twilight found it all fascinating, and Applejack seemed just as engaged, and before Twilight knew it, the sun was going down. She glanced in the direction of the sunset and gasped, Oh, wow, Applejack, look! The meadow in the shade of the trees was already dark, and tens of thousands of fireflies hovered over it, mirroring the stars beginning to... What? Let me start over that one. That was weird. The meadows in the shade of the tree was already dark, and tens of thousands of fireflies hovered over it, mirroring the stars that began to show in the deep blue sky. The sunset shone through the upper branches of the trees like the flame on a candle on the candle, lighting the whole world in a warm, rosy light. Applejack smiled. That's right. That right there, what I wanted to show you on our first date. What it looks like. What it looks like way out here, with the sun just going down. Twilight was entranced, so much so that she didn't notice that Applejack had moved until she sat down beside Twilight. First time I heard your name, I thought of this, Applejack said quietly. A lot of folks would think Twilight Sparkle sounds like a fancy name, all magic and stuff. But it can be simple, too. Just the setting sun and the fireflies dancing, and the stars peeking through. I've been meaning to show you for some time, but I was scared it's a little too homegrown for you. I thought you might take it wrong. It's beautiful, Applejack, Twilight said. Then she blushed. I, I remind you of, er, I remind you of this? How could I take it wrong? It's one of the nicest thing any pony has ever said about me. Well, that ain't right. I can think of a whole barn full of nice things to say about you. Applejack leaned against Twilight and gave her a gentle nuzzle. Twilight smiled and returned the nuzzle. I've been thinking a lot of nice things about you, too. Should I say them? I reckon there ain't much nice to say about me. Applejack blushed and looked down. But you can always tell me what you're thinking. Well, I was thinking that sometimes I think too much, Twilight said sheepishly. Applejack gave an amused snort, but there was a tender smile on her face. I know, Twilight nodded, but I was thinking that there's some pony that I don't think too much about. She's just there, exactly what she seems to be, honest and dependable and beautiful. I mean, Applejack smiled softly. Go on, Sugar Cube. Twilight relaxed against Applejack's warm body, laying her head on her shoulder. Well, it's nice to not think, sometimes. It's nice to just know some pony. To not worry that I'm missing something or that I'm not understanding you. You're just something that's true. Princess Celestia raises the sun each day. Spring comes after winter wrap up, and Applejack is just who she is. And she'll always be there for me. You know that's the truth, Applejack whispered. I like that. A lot. And Twilight hesitated and looked into those big green eyes. I like you a lot. I like you too a lot. Or I like you a lot too, Twilight, Applejack said, meeting her gaze. Uh, would you mind if I kissed you? Twilight didn't answer. She just leaned over and kissed Applejack tenderly on the lips. As they parted, Twilight grinned. See? I didn't even have to think about that. I'm with a beautiful pony whom I like very much, in a perfectly romantic setting. It was just natural. Applejack smiled. Then I reckon you won't mind if I return the favor? Applejack kissed Twilight just as tenderly, but pressed the kiss slightly deeper. It felt loving and strong and gentle. Twilight decided it was a kiss only Applejack could give. They parted slowly, their faces just inches apart. Applejack whispered, Twilight Sparkle, you're the prettiest, sweetest, smartest pony I know. Twilight blushed and answered breathlessly, then you will believe me that you don't need the all part of you all. And when you use it for singular, it doesn't even make sense. Applejack looked confused for a second, then leaned back and chuckled. I reckon that ain't gonna happen, Sugar Cube, but that ain't why I think you're so smart anyway. It ain't 'cause you remember all the fancy stuff about world and big old math thingies and barrels of spell. What makes you so smart is that behind all that stuff, you're just looking for what's real and true. All the time. That's what's all that that's what all that's for, right? Well, yeah. Yes it is. Applejack smiled at her. Now that's a job I can respect. Even I even if I'll never understand half of what you're thinking. Twilight's eyes lit up as pieces fit together. The whole idea of studying is to find the things in the world that are always true. I mean, it's really the dream of any scholar to discover a new fact, a new law of the universe. She glanced over, and Applejack was smiling at her. Twilight smiled back at the pony, who was always true and consistent, dependable to the end. Applejack, will you be my fact? Sure as sugar. Applejack gave Twilight a nuzzle on the cheek and pulled her close. Twilight watched the glow fading from the horizon, feeling Applejack's strong body against hers, and whispered, Uh, you know, that phrase doesn't really make sense. Applejack chuckled and smiled at her. Just kiss me, Twilight. That one makes perfect sense, Twilight said happily, and she did. Awesome. That was awesome. Not cloppery at all. And it was just awesome. Um, not big on the whole TwiJack thing or Apple Sparkle or or Twilight Jack, TwiJack, Twiple. I don't know how you pronounce. I don't know what it is, but gotta say that was really good. Still not a biggest fan of the shipping. Sometimes I kind of like the AppleJack Rainbow Dash one for some reason. I don't know why. Um, but yeah, that was really, really good. That was a long one too. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. You can check out my other videos. Um, that would be awesome. If you liked and subscribed, that would be pretty cool too. Go check out Multi Fanfic a Day or Brony Fanfic. They're really good friends of mine. Do really great readings. Better than me, in my opinion. So yeah. With that, I guess I will see you guys later. Brony on.